My name is Adrian Morgan, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can implement attribute-based contact routing in Amazon Connect and provide business stakeholders the flexibility to make changes safely. Contact centers are at the core of your business, working hard to solve critical issues and improve customer experience with every interaction. Your frontline agents need the right information at the right time to delight customers and solve their issues quickly. Amazon Connect is a cost-effective and easy-to-use cloud contact center solution, enabling personal, omni-channel, AI-powered customer interactions. Developers can leverage a set of SDKs and APIs to embed customer communication services directly into your applications. Enable email, SMS, push notifications, chat, audio, video, and voice over the PSTN communications, all at a fraction of the usual cost and complexity. Customers want to do business with brands that provide effective, low-effort CX. But one area where many companies continue to struggle to deliver delightful customer experiences is within their contact center. Firstly, many organizations struggle to engage their customers on new digital channels, chat, messaging, and social media. Self-service options are often archaic. Press or say one IVRs, and basic chatbots with fixed menu options. And when customers do reach the contact center, agents spend a lot of time identifying who they are, repeating themselves, and wading through unnecessary complexity. Agents are tackling similar challenges, with many forced to work across upwards of 15 to 20 disconnected systems, seeking the right answers to address questions. And in the case of more complex and difficult inquiries, agents often lack the tools to ensure accounting to follow-up actions that may involve different teams or take multiple interactions to care for. All of this leads to customers feeling impatient, annoyed, dissatisfied, and agents feeling frustrated, disengaged, and exhausted. Amazon Connect was developed for the cloud to support businesses in an on-demand basis, and comes with all the core functionality you would expect to have in a contact center. This includes routing, queuing, workflows, interactive voice response, IVR, agent application, and real-time analytics. We built it from the ground up to focus on solving the needs of our customers today and for tomorrow, embedding next-gen technology right inside and offering the flexibility that they need to deliver exceptional customer experiences. We saw that there was an opportunity to simplify configuration for contact center managers and go beyond scaling limits of traditional providers and break the old, expensive pricing models. This means that with Amazon Connect, anyone, whether you are a developer or a business user, can literally spin up a contact center in less than 10 minutes from the AWS console, and then scale from tens of agents up to tens of thousands of agents. And we help improve our customers' bottom line and save money because you only pay for the features that you use, no contracts or maintenance agreements. A model that has been truly revolutionary to the industry. And machine learning is baked right into every major feature and capability of Amazon Connect. Now, if you think about the contact center, when was the last time you had an interaction where they used data that they have about you in the call or the chat? When you called in, did they know you? It's fair to say that as consumers, the organizations we deal with have lots of data about us. And typically that data has been very hard to use in the contact center. With Amazon Connect, that data is easy to get access to using Lambda and easy to use. And I think we all know what happens when data is easy to use. It increases in importance, and the number of use cases tend to expand as well. In my experience, this is the one thing enterprise organizations want in their customer experience. It's to use the data that they have to really provide a unique experience when a customer contacts them. Personalized to the point where the customer can sit back and say, they know me, and they can make it easy. We can break customer data down into two buckets, static versus dynamic data. So things like address, date of birth, mostly static. And typically this data is stored in CRMs, databases, or Amazon Connect profiles. A great option when you need to use data in the customer experience. Items like collection status and recent technical issues, they tend to be more dynamic data sets, as well as information about recent interactions, like the person was just in your store or on your website. How do you manage using this data to drive personalized experiences? The 3 attributes I've pulled out here are pretty common, but many of my customers want to route based on hundreds of attributes, not just 3. Items like the last 3 contacts, the number of devices a person has, their lifetime value, basically anything that you can think of about a customer that an organisation might have access to. And this brings up a few questions. How can you manage the creation of rules that define the outcome of these interactions? Does an interaction go to automation, an IVR? Do they go to an agent? Or should that contact actually be diverted to a completely different channel? How do you deploy these complex rules safely? And how do you manage and test these types of rules to ensure the stability of the contact center? And then finally, how do you give the power to the business stakeholders to make the rapid changes that are always required in a contact center environment? One of the great things about Amazon Connect is the flexibility to configure the solution the way you want it. We'll take you through 3 options next, with pros and cons. Let's look at a real-world example using the customer data from before. Imagine we have a business requirement to route customers according to the 3 attributes. Is the customer a VIP? Does the customer have an overdue payment? And has the customer had a technical fault in the past 30 days? So typically, customers with overdue amounts would always go to collections. Recent technical faults are routed to technical support. And if the customer is a VIP, we would typically send them to a priority VIP experience. Otherwise, go to the main menu. How do we manage the customer that, like my previous example, has all of these attributes at the same time? And then how do we scale out further to the hundreds of attributes? The permutations can be incredibly complex. Where do we route the VIP who has an outstanding balance and a technical fault? Each has a business priority, but how do we implement that business rule? There are multiple ways to implement this, but let's think about 3 techniques. Using Lambda functions, where the business defines what needs to be done to developers. Using contact flows, where the business could have access. And finally, using the open source Amazon Connect rules engine. I'm now going to hand over to Josh Passenger to take you through these options.
Thanks, Adrian. The first technique I wanted to explore uses a Lambda function invoked from Amazon Connect to determine the next action for a customer. In this case, we look at contact attributes loaded into the customer's contact record. This approach at least allows us to write unit tests for the logic in the Lambda function and make sure that we get the experience we expect for a variety of incoming contact attributes. This Node.js Lambda function inspects the contact attributes we set from Connect and returns the next best experience for the customer. This is a very simple example just to demonstrate the point. This is easy to read, but it requires a coder and infrastructure changes to modify the customer experience. The logic isn't accessible to the business. Here we see the supporting contact flow for the Lambda function from the previous slide, displayed in the Amazon Connect contact flow editor. We route specific experiences based on the output from the next action Lambda function. Adding new actions requires changes to the Lambda function as well as changes to the logic in the contact flow. These changes also need to be made at the same time. Remember, we're only talking about 3 attributes so far. What happens when we have hundreds of attributes? What about a second technique where we use just a contact flow to manage the routing logic? This is initially a viable approach where the business can manage the customer experience, but contact flows either need to be promoted between environments, dev, test, prod, or we need to allow risky changes to be made in production directly. This approach doesn't scale well. The branching logic in Connect gets complex very quickly, even with a small number of customer attributes. How do we make safe changes and test the outcomes without risking our live customer experience? Also, how do we start combining attributes when making decisions about customer experience and routing? The third option we'd like to talk about today uses the Amazon Connect Rules Engine, an open source project developed by the Amazon Connect Specialist SA team to solve these common challenges. The solution is deployed using AWS CloudFormation into a customer's account and allows authorized business and technical staff to safely manage complex contact routing experiences using well-tested components called rules, which are backed by reusable Amazon Connect contact flows. The contact flows behind rules don't change. They get configuration data passed to them by the rules engine, reducing the need to make infrastructure changes when changing business logic. Let's walk through the steps to achieve the above scenario in the rules engine and build out a more complete example, starting with creating an endpoint. After deploying Rules Engine into your account and logging in, you'll see the home page and an option to view endpoints. Endpoints are the place that you will bind incoming phone numbers to and are a convenient way to represent an entry point to a customer experience and the associated business logic. I'll go ahead and create a new endpoint called AWS Summit 2022. Once we've created an endpoint, we will create a rule set and claim the newly created endpoint. Rule sets support a folder structure in a similar fashion to Amazon S3 keys. Our newly created rule set has no rules initially, but we can start by adding rules using the Create Rule button. We will first create a rule and select the type of rule as Update State. The Update State rule saves data into the customer's state so we can access it later. We can use this rule to directly load in the JSON customer definition from earlier. Note the rule priority and activation threshold fields. The order of evaluation of rules in a rule set is governed by the rule priority, with higher priorities being evaluated earlier. We'll leave the activation threshold for this rule at 0, so this rule will always activate, and we'll cover activation threshold in depth shortly. Customer data like this would usually be loaded from Amazon Connect profiles or from a customer's CRM based on the caller's phone number. This is a topic for another day. We'll just keep it simple and load in some canned customer data. Created rules are displayed on their Owning Rule Sets detail page. Here we can see the newly created Update State rule at priority 1000 with a 0 activation threshold and no waits. Let's think about the earlier scenario where we'd like to identify VIP customers, those who have overdue payments and customers that have had technical faults in the past 30 days. Let's create some rules to handle routing for customers based on these 3 customer attributes. First, let's create a rule set with the type of rule set to identify customers with overdue payments. This rule type is used to move customers between rule sets and play optional messages during the process. The rules engine handles changing the customer's rule set, managing state. As a business user, you just need to decide the experience you want for each customer. In this case, we'll create a rule with a priority of 900 and we'll set an activation threshold to 100. Rules with activation thresholds above 0 won't fire on their own. We need to add 1 or more waits to get this rule to fire. Once the rule's created, we can start adding waits to make sure this rule only fires for the customers that we want it to be active for. I'll click on the Create Wait button and we can start creating a wait. Waits allow us to reference fields in the customer's state. In this case, we're interested in customers who have an overdue balance greater than $0. If this statement evaluates to true, we'll add 100 to this rule's current score, and if the score reaches the activation threshold, the rule is activated. Here we can see the rule now has a single wait that will contribute 100 wait points if the customer has an overdue balance. Multiple waits can be configured, each having a different wait value. In this way, it's possible to create and, or, and other logic constructs and adjust the activation threshold according to the desired outcome. Let's repeat the process and add a rule to identify customers with recent technical faults and map these to rule sets containing the experience we want for each type of customer. Our completed rule set should now look something like this. Note that we also added a default menu rule set at the bottom with a priority of 0. This captures customers who don't match the previous 3 scenarios and sends them to the main menu. We can use the priority of the rules to control the order of evaluation, and each rule can direct customers to a new experience customized for them based on their attributes. Back to the rule sets folder, we've gone ahead and created rule sets for each experience we want to support. The routing rules we created direct customers into these new rule sets. We've also added queue rules in each of the experience rule sets so that customers will get routed to the correct agents. The rules engine supports dynamic graph-based visualization of your rule sets and their connectivity from the Graph tab. Double-clicking on elements in the graph takes you to the editor for that component. We see the highlighted AWS Summit 2022 endpoint is linked to the routing demo rule set, and from here we either end up in collections, VIP customers, technical support, or in the main menu. And from the main menu, we use a DTMF menu to provide sales, billing, and technical support options. This experience was built in a few minutes, but we can already see personalization kicking in, and we haven't had to write a single line of code. But how can we start interacting and testing this experience if this is really just configuration items in a DynamoDB database? We recognize that our customers spend large amounts of time making test calls to their IVR applications, listening carefully to rendered speech, and then trawling IVR logs to confirm behavior. Since the rules engine controls the customer flow, it's possible to now simulate a full customer interaction and provide the outputs both as rendered audio and as text. I'll click on the Interact tab, choose a new interaction, and select our new endpoint, entering a customer phone number and selecting the date and time for the interaction. Starting the interaction renders the output from the interaction to the screen, and if configured, also uses Poly to render the audio for the interaction, so you can easily hear complex messages without making test calls. We think the Interactive tab will quickly become IVR developers' new best friend. Let's look at what's going on here. We can see some messages being played to the customer on the left as the customer is taken to the collections billing queue, and selecting messages on the left highlights the rule set and rule that generated the message in the Journey tab on the right. The links in the Journey tab are live and will take you to the rule or the rule set for immediate editing in a new tab. Selecting the State tab, we can see the full contents of the customer's state during the interaction. In this case, we can see the customer we loaded using update state and see that indeed we have an overdue balance. This explains why our collections rule fired and we ended up in collections. As the interaction progresses, we've also been creating a test script that can be used to replay and verify the experience in a test case. Here we can see a single message and a single queue test line. The format of the test script is designed to allow testers to verify the customer experience. If I click on Create Test, I can store this test for later execution. The Create Test dialog allows us to specify a test name, a folder, and an optional test reference code. It also allows tweaking of the test script, customer phone number, and interaction date, so it's easy to test out of hours and public holiday logic. The created test is shown on the test table and can be immediately run by clicking on the play icon or selecting multiple tests in the table and using the Actions menu to run them in parallel in batch. We expect advanced customers will create large numbers of tests representing various customer scenarios and then use this testing framework to assert that customers will get the expected experience as configuration evolves. The batch test results screen shows the results for executed tests and allows users to quickly determine the cause of any test failures. Clicking on the eye icon for each test loads the test back into the Interactive tab, so changes in behavior causing test failures can be quickly investigated. Customers should prepare to run tests prior to promoting configuration changes between environments to ensure that customer experience is not impacted, regardless of the complexity of personalization in the executed rules. What about a more complex example where we now need to identify customers who might have been affected by a natural disaster and play them a customized message? Recall in the Lambda approach, we would need to edit the Lambda function and the contact flow and possibly identify customers based on postcode ranges. In the contact flow approach, we'd need to adjust the logic in the contact flow and publish it and work out how we could use branch statements to identify affected customers, possibly by first flagging them in the external CRM. The good news is, in Rules Engine, this is easy. To achieve it in Rules Engine, we simply create a new message rule with a priority of 950, just below the update state rule and above the routing rules, with an activation threshold of 100. Note that we use the customer's suburb to personalize the message we'll play to the customer. Now we just need to add some weights. We know the suburbs affected by this event had postcodes in the range 3050 to 3060, so we can add 2 weights that must both be true for the rule to activate. Let's save this and test interacting with the experience again. The interact session shows our targeted rule set is working perfectly. We've identified Adrian as a storm-affected customer and played him a message indicating we've waived his bill. Back to you, Adrian.
So, we've taken you through 3 different ways to approach the challenge of using large numbers of customer attributes to provide a truly dynamic customer experience. Using Lambda, using a contact flow, and using the open source rules engine. We've demonstrated how the flexibility of Amazon Connect gives you multiple paths to adoption, depending on the skills and the operating model in your organization. The Rules Engine project is only possible because of the extensive API support of Amazon Connect, and was inspired by many customers' desires to separate out the Amazon Connect infrastructure from the business logic. When you think about personalizing the experience across large numbers of attributes, Rules Engine shines as an easy way to provide a differentiated experience to your customers. The Rules Engine video training content allows business analysts to get up to speed quickly to design, build, and test new customer experiences, and then deploy them safely and quickly. To gain more confidence and hands-on experience with AWS, access the digital training built by AWS experts. Attend our instructor-led classes by qualified AWS instructors, and learn how to design, deploy, and operate highly available, cost-effective, and secure applications on AWS. Validate your technical expertise with AWS, and use practice exams to help you prepare for AWS certification. Scan one or both of the QR codes on the screen to get started with your cloud skills, training, and certification. Thank you again for attending. We really appreciate your feedback so that we can better understand the topics and services you would like to know more about. So please do take the time to fill out our survey and let us know what you think. Thank you.